then let's get this guy up, U.S. location and place. So we should finish this today. Let's see. I believe have we gotten to, oops, don't do that. Have we gotten here yet? So we were here? Yes? Fantastic. So we had finished talking about the various regions of the United States. Yeah. Okay, well, to catch up on the notes, if you go on the YouTube channel, if you go through Edmodo, did you get the Edmodo code? Okay, can someone give that to her at some point? If not, okay, just hit me when the bell rings, or if I have extra time at the end, and I'll give it to you and we'll take care of it. Anyways, if you go on there and you go into folders, you'll see one of them says YouTube. Click on that, it'll open up our YouTube channel. And like right now, I'm recording this. Like you'll see everything that's on the presenter, plus you'll hear us talking. So you can actually like, get all the notes and what's said and things like that from there. Okay? If you have any questions, that's later. No big deal. So continuing where we left off. This shows the regions of the United States. Again, you don't have to memorize them, but some things you might need to know is the differences between various regions. I mean, culturally, it's pretty different. We'll get to that a little bit later when we get to the idea of region. This is just more like specific place and what have you. But one thing you have to understand, of course, is the differences in weather and just how big the United States really, truly is. You know, the simple fact is that lifestyle is pretty dramatically different. Culture is different, language is different, but also physical location. You know, I think this is really no great surprise to really put your mind to. I mean, everyone knows you go to Florida, it's going to be a lot nicer weather than hanging out in the Ohio River Valley. But still, this is something that folks sometimes fail to realize is we have deserts here. You know, we have lots of mountains. We've got a lot of different variables in terms of climate. The most common, though, is humid continental. That's the one we experience. So basically think of weather like here is pretty common throughout the United States, but it also differs dramatically on where you go. So suffice it to say, there's quite a few differences. Canada is actually kind of similar to the United States in that regards. When you go south, most people in Canada live right here along the border. Like 90% of Canadians live there. It's very, very small population density, which is one of the tools that geographers use to explain where people live. An area of high population density, where you've got a lot of people per square mile, is going to usually be a city, or it's near waterway, or both. And then we start to get areas with lower population density. You start getting to places like, you have to get some streams like Mount Noah, which is basically a whole lot of people spread out over a wide area of time. Right? I say not very many people. But the other thing is that it tends to mirror the northern United States, and that's to say the central area of Canada, which is basically Ontario and Quebec, is where most people live. Think of that sort of like the original 13 colonies area of the United States. Because again, it was kind of their version of that. It's where people first settled from Europe. You still have Native Americans all throughout, but this is where the Europeans and the settled, so it's the areas of most industry and most concentration. Start going west, you start running into the plains of Canada, which mirrors the Great Plains of the United States. That's their breadbasket. Most crops are grown there. So you talk about the food areas, that's what we're talking about. Start going even farther west, Alberta and British Columbia, you start running into fewer people. Although, again, the west coast of Canada tends to mirror the west coast of the United States. So place-wise, Canada is very similar in a lot of ways to the northern United States. However, once you start getting farther north, it's more like Canada. It's very, very, very cold. We're talking latitudinally on the Arctic. So most of Canada is actually uninhabited, or at very least very sparsely inhabited. You've got a lot of natural resources up there, though, from natural gas and fuel to even lumber. We don't think of lumber as being a raw material as a natural resource, but it's incredibly important. I mean, think of how many things have wood in it, Wood is in everything, pretty much. We need lumber to build. I remember after 9/11, there was a lumber shortage. Like, there was not enough wood. How crazy is that? But it's a major export. The problem is getting to it. I don't know if you guys have ever seen commercial logging operations, or if you ever watch that show like Axemen or things like they have on History. Why it's on Discovery Channel. It's on Discovery Channel. It's like it's pretty involved. And getting up there is kind of tricky. So we have this problem of movement with isolation and things like that. But regardless, think about Canada, and their culture and everything like that. It's similar yet very different. One of the major things Canadian-wise is between the French Canadians and the kind of English Canadians. Again, Canada was a nation born of two countries in war. You guys are probably familiar with the American Revolutionary War, yes? I hope so. Yeah, kind of. Okay, because I feel like nobody nodding. It's like this class. I don't know what it is. We're like, there's revolution. Yes, it's fantastic. But you guys know what started the Revolutionary War? What started the Revolutionary War? There's another war. Sure, but that's kind of, it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Like, why do they want the separation?
Because the king was paying too many taxes.
Okay, that's a big part. No taxation of representation is kind of the usual method of thing. Why was he taxing us?
Well, I don't know. I know he was like trying to rule the. I don't know. This is what I learned. How he was like trying to rule them all the way from England when he's like all the way across the ocean.
Also a great reason. Which brings me to one of my pet peeves when it comes to history. If you ever have anyone say, "Well, the reason that this happened," they are lying, or they're oversimplifying. It's more the case. They're not necessarily telling falsehoods knowingly, but they're oversimplifying. Everything has multiple reasons, multiple causation. If you try to say, there's only one reason for anything happening, you're full of it. Because why you had breakfast this morning? What you had for breakfast? There's multiple reasons. It's what you happen to have. It sounded okay, whatever. There's all these reasons that kind of compounded things. So things like wars have a lot of them. But getting back to the taxing issue, right? Okay. So why does the government have taxes? Yeah, what do they do with that money? Pay for services, sure. There's all kinds of things the government provides for us in exchange for tax money. Defense, roads, education, whatever. All these things that kind of trickle down and lead to services, yes? Well, here's the thing. Wars are one of the most expensive. I'm sure you're familiar with this old analogy, but weapons are expensive. Training soldiers is expensive. Feeding those soldiers is expensive. Housing those soldiers is expensive. It's a very expensive process. So then that begs the question, why go to war? The usual answer, at least for much of history, is land. Land provides an unimpeded source of economic bounty. That land, whatever you can harvest from it, raw materials or, in some cases, crops, that's going to recoup any losses you spend in acquiring it. So land is valuable. People fight over it. Otto von Bismarck, who we'll get to next year, great general, also great statesman, said that warfare is just the political process carried out through another means. Meaning that war is just basically disagreements that we have, but it just is another way of getting what we want. Here's the thing is, though, we have to pay for this war. Land, of course, is going to provide that later on, but how do we get money out of the land to raise taxes? So here's what happens. Canada is divided between England and France. Both are at war with each other. In a war that's internationally known as the 7 Years' War. Okay? England versus France. We focus on our front of the war. This is an international war. They're fighting in India, they're fighting in Europe, everywhere. Still not. We focus on our particular corner of that war in U.S. history, and we call it by another name. Because we're looking at it from the British side of things in North America. Because that's who wins. But we look at it as the British versus the French and their allies, hence we call it the French
and Indian War.
There you go. The French and Indian War, otherwise known internationally as the 7 Years' War. So England wins. Hooray! But now here comes the problem. They amassed a huge amount of debt paying for this war. So we got to find a way, as you know, Parliament, how are we going to pay for this war? Well, we got to tax people, yes? Here's the problem. Who's like, I'll pay more taxes? I will. Take my money, please. No, that's no one. No one.
That's not good.
That's right. Shut up and take my money. That doesn't happen. At least not for taxes, anyways. So this begs the question: who gets stuck with the bill? The British are like, it's not. This is a colonial problem. They're the ones getting the land. They should have to pay for it. The colonists are saying, dude, no. This was for the glory of Britain. We all need to pay for it. Guess who won the vote? Yeah, the colonists get stuck with it. So the colonists are kind of mad about this. You're raising our taxes and add fuel to the fire. The colonials are saying this, but do they have any appointed officials in parliaments? Do they get any votes? No, hence the no taxation, no representation. We're mad about a Revolutionary War. So one would not have happened without the other, at least not in that way. You with me so far? Fantastic. So we have a French Canadian and an English Canadian side of things, which is why they were bilingual nations. There's a lot of other cultural differences, and they tend to be kind of about each other, but they are one nation. All because of history. It happened 100 years ago. It's fascinating. So anyways, region, you know, stuff's going on. I realize I'm actually supposed to be talking about place and location, but that's just fun little facts. Let's throw it out. So let's talk about climate for just a second. So we said the number one climate in the United States was what? Humid continental. Fantastic. What's the number one climate in Canada? Does anyone know? Coniferous forest, actually. Coniferous forest, evergreen trees. Which, did we talk about that already? Difference between deciduous and coniferous? Just quick review. Coniferous, good way to remember it, they're evergreen trees because they all have pine cones. Coniferous. Deciduous, flat-leafed trees. So examples of coniferous trees would be like your firs, spruces, holly, things like that. Whereas your examples of things like deciduous trees would be like oak and mahogany and things like that. So, you know, again, one of the things we realize pretty quickly about Canada is that even though it's huge by land, there's not that many people there. You know, it's pretty widely populated, at least in terms of population density, especially when you go farther north. However, there are still a lot of Native American groups there. None of it is basically all Native Americans, if not all. I'm not 100% certain on that. But, again, creates a pretty diverse place when you get right down to it. And that's actually, well, we'll get to that, cultural differences. But anyways, but this kind of gives you a breakdown of the different climates. Again, you don't really have to know all those, but I would know the number one, which is, of course, again, deciduous. You with me so far? Fantastic. By the way, one of the things we're going to talk about is the way that the land was shaped. You see, one of the things, again, going back to place, is as we describe places, it's constantly shifting. At one point in time in history, this entire area was surrounded and covered by ice, known as the
Ice cream.
Sure. Including these giant, moving, almost rivers of ice. You know what I'm talking about? Glaciers, sure. If you guys have actually ever seen a glacier, they look like frozen lakes or frozen rivers. You know, they're they are constantly moving, just, you know, slowly. But they're constantly shaping the land, carving out areas of recesses. Grand Canyon formed through glaciation, process of erosion. Actually, not so much glaciation, excuse me. That was actually, I think, because of the river. But same basic principle is eroding the land and actually leaves behind deposits of soil from other places, as it does called humus. Not the delicious pita stuff, but you know, bits of old dead things, essentially. So again, if we look at the actual climate regions of Canada in a map, you'll see all this green, that's all forest. So again, one of the major production resources out of Canada is actually timber. you know, again, it's kind of important. Yeah, right? The funny thing is that when you start cutting down trees, you realize that that's actually really important, because trees are big, heavy things. They hit you, you die. I don't know if you guys remember much of the windstorms, the ice storms that hit years ago. But you know, one of the big problems with snapping branches high up, they're called widowmakers, because it's really, really high up. You don't see them. When the wind blows just right, they come crashing down. They can just like right on top of the noodle. A lady died in Louisville because they got hit by one of those. So it's serious business. You ever see a damaged tree, you gotta bring it down. Yes.
My neighbor's tree, like the whole thing fell around and like their whole shed was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank goodness it's a shed, not, you know,
Yeah.
person, you know. The thing I always think about is, like, you know, trees are kind of heavy things. They hit a house, they can tear apart pretty easily. That's one thing I think folks don't realize quite how much snow northern climate gets, you know, places like Michigan, what have you. I've seen many images of people like shoveling snow off of their roof because they let it build up, it'll get so heavy it'll actually crush their houses. So, you know, that's the thing I kept thinking about in Frozen is all that snow. I'm like, that's going to crush someone's roof. That's dangerous. Anyway. Do you want to build a snowman? No. You see that video? Someone said that first part where she says, "Do you want to build a snowman?" The guy from Up. You know, can I come in? No. But yeah, this is another map of North America. One thing also I think people fail to realize is how mountainous it is. You know, the Rocky Mountains, you actually connect it to the Sierra Madre Oriental, Sierra Madre Occidental, it almost stretches all the way to the Andes. So it's almost like one giant mountain chain formed by plate tectonics. You guys familiar with that term? Yeah. Also, the Pacific Ring of Fire. Yes? Pacific Ring of Fire basically describes this area of increased tectonic activity that occurs along the Pacific Ocean. You can sort of draw a ring around it because of so much activity in that region. That's where people get all up in arms, like, you know, California is going to go flying off the United States or something like that. Like it's going to just go like fired out of an air cannon. That's not how plate tectonics work, you know. But again, it can also create some pretty lush green barren areas. And I tend to think we think Arctic means like snow, you know, constantly things like that. And it can, depending on how far north you are. There is a thing permafrost. We also got areas like this, which are pretty verdant and green. Any idea what city this is?
It looks like Panam from
Is it Salt Lake City?
Is it Panam?
No, it's not. It's actually Vancouver, British Columbia. It's I loved it as a town. We went there for our honeymoon. We'll start off. It's a lot of cruise ships go out of there. We went to Alaska because we're weird. And seriously, a lot of people are like, we're going to go where it's warmer. Right? We want to go where it's cold. We want to see bears. And we did.
That's cool.
Yeah, we were horseback riding and there were bears. And we're like, that's kind of dangerous.
My friend's in Belize right now, and he saw a jaguar as he was walking through the jungle.
Oh yeah. Walking through the Jaguars are a thing. That's terrible cars. Anyways, moving on. But yeah, this area again, even though you have this area of kind of like wilderness, you might think, again, the West Coast sort of mirrors the West Coast. Again, the process of glaciation forming little areas throughout the land, things like this. I mean, it's a pretty important process of the glaciers forming the land and create a lot of the physical land masses that we have. You know, it's this constant shifting change that again is kind of symbolic of life in the West, and again kind of describes it as well. All right, any questions? What's glaciation?
It's lost away where glaciers move and shit.
Yeah, forming land, sure. And you guys got the number one climates of the U.S. and Canada?
Something continental.
Humid continental is in the United States, it's number one climate in the U.S., and then coniferous forests in Canada, sure. And you guys know the difference between the coniferous tree and the deciduous?
Yes.
Which is evergreen? Coniferous. Good. Good. All right. I wanted you guys to hear those again because that was nowhere in the presentation. I said all that. I didn't actually put it here. Now, I do that a little bit on early on. By the time we get through to Asia, Asia is nothing but pictures. There's no written pretty much anything. I find that is a skill that a lot of folks struggle with. And even my sophomores have trouble if I don't spell it out. What's important? What do I need to know? That sort of thing. And a general rule of thumb is this: if it's a proper term or name, you should know it. Even if you have to just write the term down and get what it is later, write it down. You know, again, that's, as you learn to take notes, one of the things you have to focus on. The other thing is proper names. Eventually, I'm going to make you guys know the 7 years going on sort of stuff. I just kind of went on a tangent there, but that is actually in the region section. You will need to know all that. We'll get to that later, though. So stuff like that, you would be writing down. You'd be getting stuff like that. I'm actually taking a lot of work out for you by recording this. This is a great tool, because if you're just writing down the terms and just listen to what I say, you don't have to have the definitions. You can go back to the recording later to get that part. So this is just something to consider as you guys kind of use what's available to you in order for you to get all the information, but also not killing yourself and how much you have to write down.
What did you say the number one
In Canada, it's coniferous forest.
What's the other one?
In U.S., it's humid continental. Savvy? Understand.
See.
Good. Clear. So, again, just these are some things to ponder as we go through. I want you guys to start getting used to the idea. If I say something you don't see it, write it down. At worst, I'm getting ahead of myself and you'll get it written up later. At best, it's something I'm never actually going to put on a board you still need to know. Savvy?
Claro.
Oh, Claro, okay, see.
I like them complicated.
Alrighty. So, that's everything for today then. Tomorrow we have the quiz, and also you need to turn in your maps. Now, let me go over the map thing with you real quick, what I'm expecting. Your maps need to have on them the state or province or territory, depending on what it is, and their capital city. Okay? You can have it as a list and just have the numbers, that's fine. But I need that stapled together with your name on it, first and last, if you please. I can't tell you how many times I have someone just put their last name on my dude, your sisters. I'm supposed to know different. Or something to that effect. It also allows me to get the grade sooner. Eventually I'll figure it out. But whenever you're ready to turn it in, just put it in the folder over here marked turn in, and just slide it under 8th period. Same thing for your syllabus back page if you have not done so already. You've already turned it in, no worries. I haven't graded it in yet, though. I'm waiting until they're all turned in before I do that.
Those BBC news articles, do we have to do 2 of them?
You have 1 this week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, but thank you for reminding me because I might have forgotten. So you guys have your first BBC News article due, okay? It's not due till next Tuesday. I know it's online. You could have hypothetically turned it on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but we're not here in school. I'll post it back till then. So what you need to do is you go on the BBC News World site, which I've handily linked to you through the folder, but if you just Google BBC News, it's the first one. You click on the tab marked U.S. and Canada. Any article in there is fair game to read. You read the article and you summarize it in 5 sentences. Basically, tell me what you read in the article in 5 sentences exactly, and you're done. Now, the way you turn it in, do not write anything on a loose leaf sheet of paper, any of that sort of thing. You're doing it on Edmodo. So when you go to Edmodo, you'll see where it says assignment. There's a little box that says turn in. Click on it. It'll open a parser bar. You know the thing? That is a big open space with a blinking parser where you type in the word show up. Okay? You type in your 5 sentences there. Or if you'd rather read it and type it out in Word or whatever else, to be my guess, and copy paste it, hit submit. It will then say, it has been submitted, or it will say, there has been a problem, try again, whatever. Submit it till it says, it has been submitted, and then you are done. That is all you need to do. I will be grading them via Edmodo. Okay? Everyone understand how to do that? You have a week. It's like a 10-minute assignment. It's really not hard or complicated or weird or anything. The weirdest thing you might have to deal with is if your technology is acting up. Which, let me go ahead and preface it by saying this. You have a week. Technological problems are not my problem. They are your problem. I'm not trying to say it to be mean. I'm saying it because if someone comes to me after a week and says, my computer wasn't working, you're still getting a detention. See what I'm saying? That's how I deal with assignments that aren't turned in. I'm not going to give you a 0 on any assignment because you didn't do it. I'm going to give you detention to make you do it in detention. You know, or if you've already done it, you just have to serve that detention and you're done. Does that make sense? So if you don't want a detention, turn it in on time. Make sense? Okay. Now, my personal recommendation is don't do it tonight. You can if you want to, whatever. But work on your studying for the quiz tomorrow first. Then the next night, do that. Like I said, it's like a 10-minute maybe assignment. But most books will finish like in 5. It's read this. Okay, that's what this is about. Type. Done. Super easy. But it has to be 5 sentences exactly because you get 2 points per sentence. That's how I grade it. So if you only do 4 sentences, even if they're really good sentences, you only get 8 points.
Or if you do more than 5.
You just get maximum.
Okay, great.
Make sense? Alright, if you guys have any questions, like later, you're like, I don't understand how this is working, just come see me, I'll try to help you explain it out. If it's like one of those things like literally my account's not working, I'll work with you on it. But you gotta tell me before it's due. You know what I'm saying? Now the reason I'm also doing this is because in college this can be problematic. Professors really don't care in a lot of cases if it's late, why it's late. I had one professor tell me, I don't care if someone dies in the family, it's due this day. Like literally, that was their attitude. It's due now, plan ahead, whatever.
Oh.
So the thing is like, even though it's kind of like, well, that's kind of heartless, it's like, okay, well, that's a deadline. It's called a hard deadline. There's no wiggle room, so get it turned in. And once you start prioritizing your life around these things, you know, hey, it works out. It's no big deal. That's maturity. It's self-discipline. That's what we want. You know, that's basically. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording, and give me a second. You can come up, and I'll get you the pen. Okay. Suddenly the lights. Yes.
From Dr. Walton.
Yes. If you go to the end of this T, hang a right. It's the rightmost classroom before you get to the stairwell.
Okay.
I don't know what room number it is, but it's over there. Thank you. Bye.